Good afternoon, everyone. It's a beautiful October day, but I'm wishing it for rain. Of course, the pear orchards in this valley are quite sensitive to climate, and that's one of the reasons that we have them here, is because they really don't adapt to a lot of parts of the United States. But in my lifetime, I've witnessed or been told about 3 different cycles that spans over 105 years. When my grandparents moved here in 1910 from Illinois, in the process of moving, my father had a sled that he wanted to bring along, but he was told it never snows in Oregon. So that was sold, and in the fall or winter of 1910, they woke up to 10 below zero one morning and 12 inches of snow. Needless to say, he was quite disappointed. But that was really the beginning of a new cycle. After that severe winter, there was very little frost problem. And frost is considered to be the #1 reason for crop failure in pear orchards and most fruit crops. He raised pears from 1910 until his passing in the 40s, never had a loss from frost. And then my father had an orchard on South Stage Road, and in 1954, May 1st, he lost the entire crop to frost. And after that 1954 frost, and up until that time, I should go back, very little orchard heating south of South Stage Road. But after that 1954 freeze, until 1972, you would freeze out 3 out of every 5 years if you didn't protect. And of course, frost control is a very expensive and trying operation. In the 50s, after the Great Freeze, we could buy oil for around 15 cents a gallon, up until $3 recently. And so something had to be done. Therefore, you see the fans that have come into the valley, which have cut oil consumption by 80%. And the other resource that we use for frost protection is water. Over tree or under tree. With under tree, it would be in conjunction with the fan. So there has been a lot of adaptation to prices and climate. And then since the 1972 freeze, which was April 18th, it got to 18 degrees the 18th of April, and 3/4 of the pear crop was lost. But since that time, we've had another modification where we really haven't had any severe frost like that since that time. So therefore, in my lifetime, I've witnessed 3 very different cycles. And so, in my unscientific mind, is there climate change or are we in a new cycle? But we're here today to think of what if there is one. This last summer, we had a little taste of hot weather and drought. Although with the warm weather, it was a rather good growing season, but provided you had the water to irrigate crops. A little warmer temperature here would really be a benefit to the pear trees because we have as I've mentioned, the frost, which is our #1 problem, and also pollination. Is a problem in the springs when we have cool, wet weather. The bees don't fly, and the blossoms won't pollinate anyway in that kind of condition. So pollination and frost would be 2 cultural problems that would be solved with some rise in temperatures. However, it can't be radical because then ultimately there would not be enough chilling. That's the other side of the coin, because most fruit crops, the deciduous fruit crops, uh, apples, peaches, require about 1,500 hours of cooling of 40 degrees or below to go dormant enough to set a crop. If they don't get that chilling, then the trees will bloom and the blossoms will fall off. And there are some problems in the Sacramento area with chilling now on their pears that they produce there. They have to do some spraying to offset this, although that would only be good for a modest remedy. And they don't grow pears in Southern California because it's too warm. And in turn, they don't grow pears in Montana because it's too cold. So the range of climate that they will tolerate is rather narrow, and we happen to be in an area where it's rather almost perfect. Cool days and warm nights, and up until this year anyway, an adequate amount of water. And water is the key word. If we're headed for warmer temperatures, it will require more water from probably different sources than we look to now for supply, because the snowpack is part of our reservoir. The reservoirs that we have for water is not adequate to supply the irrigation demand here. We need a snowpack to do that. So other sources and practices will have to be done. Piping of the canals. One thing that impacted the water supply here for irrigation was the loss of the use of acrolein, which was an algicide to keep the moss out of the canals. And really, these canals are a big mess now. They have to clean them with what they call a moss rake, which causes all kinds of dirty water. If you happen to be sprinkling below where they're cleaning, you're going to get shut down. And so consequently, a lot of people have avoided going to sprinklers over flood irrigation because they're the only people who can irrigate when they're cleaning those canals. So that's just one area that where a big improvement could be made, because we're wasting a lot of water to tail off water, flood irrigation that has to be done because of dirty canals. And in my grandfather's day, as I mentioned him earlier, they grew their pears dry land. They would till the soil as soon as the moisture would allow it in the spring, keep a dust mulch on the ground, which allowed the only escape of water was through the trees or vegetation, which they kept clean and of vegetation, so that the pear trees had access to that water that it was protected by a dust mulch. However, in his day, a 2 3/8 to 2.5 inch pear was a desirable size. Today, the market demands 3 to 3.25 inch pears, which is not natural. So water is the only way that you can produce what the consumer seems to demand. Now, either we have to change the consumer with promotion, or we have to develop a new water supply, a better water supply, and better practices of using it. If warming would become quite severe here, it could very well put the pear orchards out of business for lack of cooling. But there are other crops that could be looked at. Almonds, which are quite successful in California, but many have been removed because of the severe drought there. We can grow good almonds here, but they bloom so early that spring frost is a real danger to them, so they're not really produced commercially. Recently, in the past 5 years, they were trying to introduce olives into the area, but 2 cold winters of about 15 degrees actually destroyed the plantings. And so olives, these were oil olives, probably those could be produced, and probably even dessert olives. Row crops such as tomatoes, instead of picking them in August, you might be picking them in May if we had a warm climate. So there are a lot of alternatives that could be done. It all depends on how severe climate change would be, and if it indeed gets warmer than maybe we might estimate that it may do. So there are questions, but we do have alternatives that we could turn to, and we would still have agriculture here. Does anybody have any questions? Yes?
Before pears, what was the big crop in this area?
Actually, Newtown apples were the big crop, and some prunes, but the demand for the Newtown apples kind of disappeared, so the pears took over and were a more profitable crop. And now we're going from pears and to a conversion to a lot of grapes, and it's my understanding that if we had a warmer climate, that would be a benefit to them also.
And before the apples, was it a nut crop?
Not a lot of nuts here, no. There's some walnut orchards. That may not have been the right answer, but anyway. Not in this room, definitely. But nuts were never produced here in any real quantity. The Newtown apples really were the predominant crop when my grandparents moved here in 1910. Before that, it was the gold rush. Yes?
You mentioned about mulches, and I haven't seen much of that practiced yet. What kind of mulches do you see coming into the Road Valley?
Well, the mulches that they used in my grandfather's day was just a dust mulch. In other words, they tilled the orchard and kept it tilled throughout the summer. And in that kind of a condition, very little moisture escapes from the soil except what plants would draw out. You can summer fallow a field where you, for say, weed control, and you keep the weeds cultivated down for entire summer, the moisture will still be there in the fall. And I assume that other mulches could be done, but just tilling the soil was adequate to do the job, but not to raise 3.5-inch pears. Yes. Oh, acrolein was an algicide that kept the moss out of the canals. And I forget the year, there was an accident where some was spilled. And although it does not harm plants or animals, it will kill fish because it takes the oxygen out of the water. And as near as I can tell, I was actually on the board of the irrigation district at the time. It looked like about 200 fish were counted at the diversions down below where the accident happened. And so then, because of the Clean Water Act, we were forbidden from using that any longer, not because we had killed the fish, but a requirement of what they call an NPDES permit was required to use this product, which was not available at that time. The label on the material did allow that use, but after that fish killed, then there was a $3 million lawsuit filed against the irrigation district, which was the Talent Irrigation District, and so that practice was not used any longer and not permitted in other districts. It had been used for 25 years without a problem, and could be used today if we would take the effort to build ponds to hold this water until the acrolein dissipated. But that was a serious blow to irrigation and a serious blow to the efficient use of water. Thank you.